everybody. Just a couple things before I take questions. Want to comment on the situation this year with COVID, and I think how well as an organization we handled it. We ended up with only 5 people in the organization testing positive. None of those individuals contracted it in the building or spread it to anybody else in the building. So we avoided the outbreaks that other teams had to deal with, which I think is a testament to our staff and the players and the coaches and how serious they took the protocols and how careful they were when they were not in the building. Obviously, I think the protocols set in place by the NFL worked well. I think we're the only professional sports team in league anywhere in the country that's going to play a full regular season and, knock on wood, hopefully playoffs and the Super Bowl on time. So great job by everybody here and across the league. I really want to compliment Darrell Bevell on what he did the last 5 weeks. It's a very tough assignment to step into an interim head coaching assignment during the season. I think the players rallied around him. Darrell did a great job organizing things. Then was throwing a curveball in the middle of his 5-game stretch with the COVID situation and the close contacts with the coaches that we lost for the Bucs game. But even with that, I think we came through it in testament to Darrell for that. A couple comments on our searches. We've made public 7 general manager candidates that we've interviewed, including 3 internal candidates. We've interviewed 2 head coaching candidates so far as of last night. Marvin Lewis last week, Eric Bieniemy last night. And after this call this morning, we'll be interviewing Darrell Bevell for the position. As we go through the rest of this week and next, we'll be releasing names as we interview them. So I appreciate your patience. If you have questions about individuals that we've not yet interviewed, I'm going to defer those until we actually do meet with them and put that out there. So stay tuned. This week and next, we'll be very busy. We're now in the process of interviewing people that were unable to interview until the season ended. So we have a number of those lined up this week and a few people into next week based upon their teams playing this weekend during the wild card games. And hopefully we'll get to those early next week. And as I said, we'll let everybody know when we've completed each interview. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
All right, Tim, start us off.
Hey, Rod, good to see you. Thanks for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Hey, Tim.
Hey, just wanted to ask you about Chris Spielman. You guys obviously hired him to be a resource to kind of sit in some of these meetings. Just what kind of resource has he been for you guys so far?
He's been great. He's been in every interview since he was here. He did miss the first 3 interviews with our internal candidates, Kyle O'Brien, Lance Newmark, and Rob Lohman, but then he doubled back and did individual one-on-one interviews with each of those folks. He's been great in the interviews, really focusing on a lot of the football questions that he brings expertise to. He's also been great in the building, meeting with a lot of the coaches and players. He has contacts all over the country from his media days and playing days with coaches and others. And he's brought a lot of information to the table on candidates that we're considering and feedback and research. So it's been great having Chris here, and he brings energy, as everybody knows, if you know him, that is a very positive influence in the building. Great addition.
Thanks, Rod.
Dave?
Hey, Rod. Good morning. 2 things for you. Well, a bunch of things, but I'm sure others will get to some of those. But one, Sheila, I think I'd asked her this when she talked after the firings, and she said she wanted to wait till the end of the season. Can you just identify some traits, that you're looking for in head coach, GM? What do you value in this search?
Good question. And I think we talked about this when Chris and I did some press. We developed, very specific criteria for both positions that we're looking for that are unique, not totally unique, but we think in some cases very unique to our situation. I won't share all of them with you, but I would say they focus on leadership, culture, teamwork, awareness of each other's strengths and weaknesses. And what we're really looking for is a culture that is open, inclusive, where everybody's pulling together as a team, and one where communication is paramount, and everybody is doing the right thing for the Detroit Lions. And so the people that we're looking for and people that we're bringing in to interview, I think, exhibit those traits as we go through the interview process. Hopefully we find people that we're 100% confident will be the right people for the organization. And as I said, I think one of the previous calls, that's very different than how we approached the search for Bob and Matt, where we were more focused on, candidates because of their accomplishments as opposed to the criteria that had been established before we started interviewing them. So I'm very comfortable with the process and how it's working so far and the criteria that we developed.
Appreciate that. The other thing, and because I've got this question a lot, is can you explain why you're interviewing head coaching candidates without a GM in place? I don't know if you're still open to that, coach down structure, but regardless, once you find whoever the right choice is for one of those jobs, how much will that person be then involved in picking the next hire, head coach or GM?
Sure. We're not really wed to a structure, and we're not, wed to waiting for a GM to be hired to find the head coach. As we've gone through the interview process with both GMs and head coaching candidates, we've been sharing our ideas, and they've been sharing with us their ideas on who a good coach would be if it was a general manager candidate, and vice versa if it was a head coaching candidate. So there's going to be no surprise, I don't think, at the end who we end up hiring on both sides. And what we're really looking for is people that can work together and be partners, and not one working for the other necessarily. So it doesn't require us to hire a general manager first. It may work out that way because we're a little bit ahead on the general manager search relative to the head coaching search. But if we find the perfect head coach and we've not yet found a general manager, we're not going to wait on the coach. We're in competition with other teams who are interviewing some of the same people. And it's important, I think, to get the right coach. And if that means we have to hire a coach first, that's what we'll do.
Thank you.
Mike?
Hey Rod, I've got two for you. First is how do you feel like your experience, you hit on it a little bit, but you can go a little bit more detail. How did your experience with the general manager search when you hired Bob, and then what kind of transpired over the last 5 years, and then same thing with Matt over the last 3. How has that shaped maybe your view on what you feel like maybe you're not looking for?
It's a good question, Mike. I think experience is the best teacher. And I think having gone through this now twice, there's things I've learned and things hopefully that we'll do better. And I think, one of the things is adding more people to the process. When Bob and I interviewed for Matt, it was just Bob and I. We've now, obviously, Sheila's involved, added Chris Spielman. Mike Disner's been very involved. I think having, more candidates is a difference too. With Bob's process, we interviewed 3 people. We've already interviewed 7 for the general manager, and we'll continue to add to that list. I think also, just understanding, how the jobs function and what the jobs are about. And being a general manager is not necessarily just picking players and putting a roster together. There's more involved in that. So finding people who exhibit some of the skills that are required to be a good manager of people and processes, not just picking players. And then ultimately with the head coach, I think, leadership and somebody that can work with the general manager and somebody that has had experience either as a head coach, or you can project that experience as a coordinator to being a head coach, and really diving into those types of questions. Not that we didn't do that with the search for Matt, but I think trying to do it differently, hopefully we'll find the right people.
And the second question I have, since we only get 2, and like Dave, I've got a ton, but with Calvin Johnson, Hall of Fame nominations and possible election is later this month. Where does the organization stand with trying to mend fences with him, as it seems to be an ongoing, obviously, topic over the last 3, 4, 5 years?
I would say nothing's really changed. We're very much supportive of Calvin's candidacy for the Hall of Fame. Continue to try and reach out to him, but it's going to require both of us to get together on that. It's not just us, and I won't really comment on where we stand on that. But certainly, as I've said from the very beginning, that's my goal.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Rob.
Yep.
Matt Groom?
Hey, Rod. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yep, always a pleasure to talk Detroit Lions with you. My first question is really just, I'm curious and wondering your personal opinion on how the organization can get to where it needs to go, because there's really 2 schools of thought. Either the roster needs to be rebuilt completely from top to bottom, kind of blow it up, or retooling. So I'm just curious your personal opinion on how the team can get to where it needs to go in terms of those 2 schools of thought.
Well, my personal opinion, is going to only matter a little bit. The opinion of who we hire, the coach and the general manager, is going to matter a lot more. I do think, despite the record, we're not as far away as it might appear. So I would think that we can, retool some things and continue to be competitive while we're also, I think in some cases, certainly on the defensive side of the ball, having to rebuild the roster a little bit. So it's a little, maybe a combination of both. But there'll be other people here in the building soon that will have big votes on those two questions.
Absolutely. And then my second one kind of involves the Lions' relationship with the league. Obviously, there was opportunity to potentially ask the league to move the game back. It didn't happen. We've seen over the past few years, maybe even a decade, officiating calls that really just haven't gone the Lions' way. And people are just wondering, is there anything more the Lions can do to potentially improve things in regards to maybe officiating and maybe the relationship with the league?
That's a good question. I understand where you're coming from. I think we have a really good relationship with the league, notwithstanding some of the evidence to the contrary. And I have a lot of contacts in the league that I talk to regularly. I think that they're as supportive as they can be, and I don't think that they intentionally treat us any different than other teams, even though it might appear that way. With regard to rescheduling the game, certainly it could have been done, but the game had been moved to Saturday. It's a national TV game. I don't think that we were treated any worse than Denver was a few weeks ago when they had to play a wide receiver from their practice squad at quarterback. There's been other teams, unfortunately, that have had difficult issues with COVID, and this was our turn. And I understand why they made the decision. We asked, but I don't think it was because of any ill will towards the Detroit Lions on that front. Officiating, clearly we've had our share of calls that you wish went the other way. I think a lot of other teams probably feel the same way too. I do see, reports after every game that we send into the league, asking about specific calls. Quite often they acknowledge it could have gone the other way, and sometimes they, point out that we're wrong in how we look at it. So we have a good relationship with the league, and hopefully we don't have to rely upon, refs' calls to win games. We just go and do it ourselves. That's what we should be trying to do.
Appreciate it, Rod. Thank you.
Yep.
We'll go three more, starting with Chris Burke.
Morning, Rod. Thanks for the time.
Hey, Chris.
I had a couple. The first one's just kind of a quick procedural one, I guess. I've seen other teams start signing guys to futures contracts and things like that. It's just curious what the interim GM group, whatever you want to call them, if they're able to do anything on that front, or if you're kind of in a holding pattern until you make a hire.
No, we're able to do that, and we're working on our futures contracts right now.
Okay. And then the other one I had, Taylor Decker mentioned yesterday that he was going to go try and talk to you before he left the building yesterday, just put in his opinion on sort of where he thought the organization could go from here. I was wondering if that happened or if any other players have reached out to you and if you could share what they've been telling you.
I've had several one-on-one meetings with players, and we had a group meeting with some of the leadership yesterday. I know several of them also stopped in and talked to Chris on their way out. I won't get into any of those conversations, but the lines of communication are open for sure. Absolutely.
Kyle?
Morning, Rod. Thanks for your time. Morning. There was a report out there that you guys wanted to make a push for John Schneider. Is that something you can confirm or deny?
I'm not going to comment on anybody that we haven't interviewed, and I'm certainly not going to comment on anybody who's under contract with another team. So there's lots of rumors out there. I don't know where they get started, but I have no comment on that. Okay,
I just wanted to ask about Matthew Stafford as well. There's different schools of thought that are developing out there about how you guys should build, whether to build around Matthew or not. Do you have a preference on candidates on which approach you want to go with at quarterback?
Don't have a preference. I will say, we're certainly talking about our entire roster, including Matthew, with everybody that we're interviewing for both positions. And he's our quarterback. He's a very important player, very important position. But again, when we have people in the building to weigh in on those decisions, that's when we'll be able to talk more about it. But certainly everybody that we've talked to admires Matthew from afar just as much as we admire him inside the building.
Thank you, Rod.
Yep.
Last one, Justin.
Morning, Rod.
Hey, Justin.
So can you maybe just give a little clarity to some of the interview process with the COVID restrictions? Is everything virtual still, and is there going to be an opportunity for face to face and second interviews along that line?
Sure, Justin. Right now, everything has been virtual up to this point, and we'll continue probably through this week. Once I think we zero in on a finalist or two for either position, we're definitely going to meet with them in person. But even then, that will be subject to where they are with the team that they may be still playing for something in the playoffs. Because until a team is eliminated, we can't meet with any of their people in person because of the COVID restrictions. Once somebody has been eliminated from the playoffs, we can do it, but under even some restrictions with that regard. So eventually we'll have face-to-face meetings, but right now everything's been virtual and it's been working fine, candidly. I mean, we're kind of all used to this. You get a good sense for the person, not maybe the same sense you would in a room with them. It is also pretty productive from a time standpoint that you can do these, and not have to fly around the country. So I think it's allowing us to be really productive this week to meet with a number of people that might have been fewer if we had to travel or have them fly in. But eventually there will be face-to-face interviews for sure.
And I just want to clarify because you said when you have the right candidate, you will hire the right candidate. So you are willing to wait till even potentially the Super Bowl if you feel that is the right candidate for this organization?
We would be willing to wait if that's what it took to find the right person. Yes. There's no deadline in our process.
Last one from me. There was a batch of interview requests put in yesterday that was put out there. And I know you said you're not going to comment specifically on candidates. Do you feel like you've reached the, scope of the request you'd like to put out there? Or are you still leaving an opening to, request further individuals for either position?
Yeah, I think that we're probably to the point where we've put forward every name that we're going to consider. But, we've had, names that we've considered and restacked and reordered, and there are a handful that we may still pursue. But right now, I'm assuming that the candidates that we're interviewing, one of them will be our next head coach, and one of them will be our next general manager.
Thank you, Rod.
Yep.
Great. Thank you, Rod. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Be safe. Take care.